Hi, my name's Ty Landrum, and I would like to speak with you today about jumping through and jumping back from a seated position to and from downward facing dog. This position occurs, the opportunity to do this movement occurs all over the Ashtanga vinyasa practice. And it's an opportunity to cultivate a very strong aponic form. So even if you don't have any sort of gymnastic aspirations to learn how to jump through and back like a yoga Olympian, it's still important to seize this opportunity to cultivate your apana by working constructively with it in the following way. So let's say you're coming out of a forward folding posture like Paschimottanasana. And the exit vinyasa will first involve inhaling and rolling the collarbones back, lifting the heart, lifting the chin, and looking up to open the prana or inhale pattern. As you release and start to exhale, you're going to squeeze the knees toward the chest, tuck the tailbone underneath you, and really round the back. So the back's coming strongly into flexion, which is giving greater expression to this apana pattern. So as you do that, the hands come down to the floor, and then as best you can, you want to lift yourself up. Just as the feet clear the hands, you're going to start to inhale, lift yourself as high as you can using the sort of upward, sort of buoyant force of the inhale pattern, and then you shoot your legs back into a plank position. Now, those movements are, of course, much easier said than done, but they at least demonstrate for you what the basic breathing and movement pattern is. So just to repeat, show you again in real time, as you come up out of the fold, you're going to open the inhale pattern, and then releasing, you start the exhale, you're going to squeeze in and lift up using the buoyancy of the inhale. You start inhaling right about there, and exhale back to Chatwari. Now, in order to cultivate the strength to better approximate that kind of movement, you need to first squeeze the knees in toward the chest. So as you come out of the form, it's important, and everyone can do this, squeeze the knees all the way as close as you can to the shoulders. And ultimately, you want to bring the shoulders, the knees to come all the way to the shoulders and against the ribs, and to stay there even as you execute the form. Then you're going to take the hands down and lift up as best you can. Now, if you find that you can't lift your knees all the way to your shoulders and your feet are hitting the ground, then it may be that you're making the very common mistake of trying to use extension in your back to push your feet back behind your hands. So this is a sort of misconception of what the movement is like. In order to do this movement, you have to stay firmly tucked and then lift yourself up and rotate around the shoulder joints. So there's a strong lifting action from the pelvic floor that goes all the way up the midline of the body. But the shoulders themselves, the shoulder girdle itself, is actually working quite strongly to help sort of rotate the body around the shoulder joints. So the feeling is as if you're jumping off a diving board and doing a sort of forward somersault. You have to keep your center of gravity over your hands in order to get the right amount of lift and in order to maintain control over the whole movement. So that means you have to keep your lower back strongly in flexion. And for many people, this is difficult. So the way you can cultivate that is just by squeezing in each time very strongly. Then the hands are going to come down. You stay tucked, and again, you lift straight up. See, the knees are still against the ribs. Okay? So, squeeze in, stay tucked, and then let's say you can't get all the way through, your feet are sort of hitting the floor. So no problem. What you're going to do is take your hands forward just a little bit, and then straighten your arms, and you're going to lift up into Tolasana. So you're going to pull your knees up towards your ribs again as much as possible and give a little hop, and that's where you'll take the inhale. So just to show that again. So this is for people who cannot clear their feet. If you can't clear your feet, you're going to do, the action has the same breathing pattern. Inhale, open the prana pattern. Exhale, release, squeeze in and lift. When the feet hit the ground, take the hands forward, then inhale, kick up, and exhale, go back. Okay? So in my experience, almost everyone can do some version of what I just described. Now, also, many of you maybe can get your feet to come all the way through, but then somehow you feel like you don't have enough lift, enough space to be able to shoot your legs back into the plank position. So that's just a matter of cultivating more strength. Staying really tucked in the aponic position, of course, will help. So you have to keep cultivating this strong aponic position just by doing those movements that I just described. But the technique will basically be the same. You'll exhale, squeeze in, take the hands to the floor, press the spine up between the shoulder blades so that you're rounded in the upper and the lower back. Shift the weight over the hands and roll forward as best you can. Hold that, and if your feet come back down, no problem, then you'll kick up, inhale, and tuck as best you can so that you have one final opportunity to cultivate the apana pattern, and then take it back. Okay. So one more note on the breathing pattern, because this movement is sometimes taught in different ways. This is the way that I prefer it. It's fully consistent with the counted vinyasa. What I like about this particular variant of using the breathing pattern is that it seems to me to give the fullest expression to the exhale and inhale patterns. So when you squeeze in like this, you want to sort of point your feet and cross your feet just above the ankles so that your feet have more space between them and the ground. And the exhale helps you keep this tuck. So you'll exhale, stay there, bring it through, and you won't start to inhale until the feet clear your hands and clear the sides of your arms. As soon as they do, you start to inhale in order to get greater lift. The inhale will help sort of lift your hips up because the inhale has this sort of upward, buoyant sort of quality to it. So that's what will help you get more hang. If you're still exhaling and trying to lift up there, it just doesn't work as well. To show you once more. Okay? So let's say you put all of that together and you find that it's not quite enough, that even doing the movements as I described them and working with the breathing pattern as I described still doesn't give you quite enough lift to be able to shoot the legs back. What do you do? Well, at that point, it's just a matter of cultivating more strength, both in the core of the body, so that you can hold the aponic tuck better, and also in the shoulder girdle, which is going to help you rotate your body around the shoulder joints. So what you can do is get a pair of nice blocks. You'll place them just underneath your hands at the same distance that they would be if you were doing a vinyasa without them. So you have to sort of, know the customs of your local studio so that you don't offend anybody when you do these kinds of things. But if the teacher is amenable to you putting this in your practice, you can put it in your practice maybe just before you do the back bends of the closing sequence, just before you embark on the closing sequence. I always think that's a nice place, a least interruptive place to put sort of extracurricular movements and exercises. So what you can do is lift yourself up, and then you're going to sort of take yourself up and back on an inhale and forward on an exhale. And as you go forward, you want to squeeze the knees all the way into the chest. As you go all the way back at the height of the pendulum swing, again, squeeze the knees all the way into the chest so that you're maintaining the tightest aponic tuck that you can. And in this way, you'll breathe, inhale, exhale, so that you're replicating the natural vinyasa pattern. Do it maybe 5 times. So. And then you can come down and take a break, give yourself 30 seconds or so to catch your breath, and then do it again. Maybe you repeat that 3 times, and then go ahead into your back bending sequence. And this will strongly help you to sort of cultivate the aponic form and the strength in the shoulder girdle that's necessary to get this movement. Moving in the other direction, from downward facing dog back to a seated position, is a totally different spinal movement, at least in the way that I'd like to teach it to you today, which is to come through with straight legs rather than doing the aponic tuck. So you'll exhale the breath all the way out. And then inhale as you land. This is just a sort of rough rule of thumb. You could, of course, start the jump at the very end of the exhale, or maybe even start the inhale as you're coming through. But you're basically doing it at the end of the exhale, at the beginning of the inhale. The movement is happening there, in that space between the exhale and the inhale. And to come through with straight legs like that, what you need is to have a very deep flexion in the hips. You need a very deep forward fold. So in order for that to happen, the sitting bones have to go way back, and the pubic bone has to dive back and reach toward the coccyx. Okay? So this is the very opposite movement in the pelvis of the aponic tuck, which involved sort of lifting the pubic bone up toward the navel and letting the coccyx drop way down and up. Here, we're going to reach the pubic bone down away from the navel and let the tailbone sort of be naturally lifted with the rest of the pelvis. Okay? The other thing is, when you're jumping through, you want to stay pretty low. You don't want to take your hips really high and try to pike through. That's a beautiful way of jumping through, but it's much more difficult than just the sort of jump through that I showed you. It takes a great deal more control, more lift, and a deeper depth of fold. So it's certainly a kind of jump through that you would want to learn after you get the hang of jumping with the hips somewhat lower to the floor. So you'll bend your knees, you'll look forward to about the same point you would look in chaturanga, just a few feet in front of your mat, maybe there or so. And you try to keep the hands way out in front of you so you get long behind the shoulders, long through the waist. Keep the sitting bones lifted really high, and try to keep all that length, keeping the sitting bones back as you throw the feet through so that the feet clear the hands. As you come through, you want to try to kick your thighs all the way to your ribs, but keep the pubic bone reaching back behind you. Like that. Okay? So for this movement, I think it can be really helpful in getting the hang of it to use blocks. So even if you just use them just for a day, just to sort of get the sense of the movement so that you start sort of trusting that you can jump through like that. And of course, in order to do this movement, you need to be able to get your ribs all the way down to touch your thighs. If your forward fold is not deep enough yet to do that, it's very unlikely that you'll be able to clear through with straight legs. In that case, you might learn to jump through with a sort of aponic tuck until your forward fold gets deeper. It's just a different technique. But for this one, you do need to get a deep enough fold for your rib cage to touch your thighs And if you have that, then you can definitely do this jumping through with straight legs technique. You just need a little trust. So the blocks can help build trust by giving you more space to lift your feet up. And what you might find is that when you jump through, even with the blocks, you keep sort of putting one foot down to touch the earth. And that just means that your body's not fully trusting this action yet. And so you just need to sort of occupy a different mental space, get in a space of trusting the movement itself, and get your feet up. So again, you go back into downward facing dog, bend the knees, keep the pubic bone lifting way back, so don't tuck and round the lower back. Try to keep the back almost an extension even as the feet come forward. The back will naturally get pulled into flexion as you jump forward, but you resist that as much as possible as you're coming through. Jump your feet all the way beyond the mat and try to keep yourself lifted up so you don't hit the floor too hard. Hands way out in front of you, exhale the breath out completely or almost all the way, and then jump through mostly empty of breath. And then inhale. I hope these techniques are useful to you. Thank you.